Welcome to the 3 Life Lessons podcast, where I, Rob Hubbard, talk to renowned figures from learning and development to uncover the secrets to their success and find out what makes them tick. Remember to like, subscribe and follow to ensure that you never miss an episode. So I'm so delighted to have here today Nigel Paine. So, it's hard to miss Nigel. You're so prolific in what you do. You're an author, you're a podcaster, you're a Learning Now TV host. You're a hugely kind of well-travelled conference speaker. And I think probably the word that I would associate you the most is energy. You're like a ball of energy, you know, as long as I've known you, there's always lots going on with you. So, first of all, Nigel, tell us about your current role now and a bit about your journey to get there.
It's a long journey, so I hope I can not send everyone to sleep in the telling of it. I'm the founder of my own company, which I've been running since 2006, 2007, long time. And I started it with a view to lasting 6 months. That was my ambition. If you can last 6 months, that's good. Then after 6 months, it was, see if you can crawl your way to a year. And now, whatever it is, nearly 20 years, 19 years later, I'm still around. And one of the things I like about being in my own organisation, in a way, is that I get to choose stuff. No one tells me what to do. And that's quite important for me, because I've spent my life in corporate and working for other people where they did tell you what to do. You've got to do this. I don't care whether you're interested in it. You have to do that. You have to work with this person, even though you can't stand them, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm the founder of my own company. And let me give you 3 or 4 things I'm quite proud of. The first one is that I helped set up the Penn CLO program, the doctoral program at an Ivy League university, the University of Pennsylvania, based in Philadelphia, that has continued to this day and is now several hundred doctoral graduates walking around the place and having, particularly in the US, increasing influence on organizations. And we tried to turn them from sometimes HR, sometimes chief executives or operations people into what we called scholar practitioners. In other words, people who were right in there doing stuff, but doing it with an evidence-based mindset. And I kind of absorbed that. It's very hard to run a program and then do the exact opposite. So it's been on a long journey for me, that evidence-based. And it ended up with me getting my own doctorate 3 years ago, which I really enjoyed. Wow. I was terrified of. I thought I'd fail. I thought I would never get through it. But I did it, and I loved it. And it wasn't even hard. It was a pleasure, really. Just being confronted with myself and confronted with trying to manage the massive amount of research data out there. And it was all about positioning L&D. So I had to take a really broad sociological, philosophical and political context for L&D and finding it wanting in many ways, just not thinking through where the world is. So it was very enlightening for me, probably not for very many other people. Doctorates don't tend to be popular texts, but I loved it. So what else do I do? Well, I'm still writing. I'm just about to finish my 4th book, which is about organisational learning. That emerged directly from the doctorate. It was quite difficult to write because I kept getting burdened by the research base. So everything I said something, I thought, I better justify that. And by the time you've justified every statement, you've gone from a nice, neat 200-page book to a clumsy, wieldy and boring 400-page one. So I had to kind of work through that. Also, I still work with companies. I really enjoy it. I've just come back from New York, where I facilitated 35 people on a journey to rebuild learning and development at MetLife. Very, very interesting and engaging. And basically, I learn way more than I give. That's what I would say. I'm in this room and people are confronting some really difficult challenges, and I'm having to work with them and work through that to something else. And I do like speaking at conferences. I used to do, one year I did 40 conferences. Now it's nothing like that. I probably do 10. But that's, 10's enough. Because I try and do something different. I never really repeat myself. I overlap myself, but I don't repeat myself. But some of the other things that I'm kind of proud of, as well as I do the TV presentation and the podcasting, but I also do a lot of mentoring young people. I really enjoy that. And I'm on several boards of startups through to big Fortune 500 companies, and I enjoy being on those organisations and listening to other people telling me about their strategy, and then I'm listening thinking, I don't have to do that. I just have to comment on it and just have to help them shape it. I don't have to do it. And I think that's really enjoyable. And I feel that makes the best use of my time. And I suppose that's it, really. That's what I am. Coach, mentor, TV presenter, podcaster, speaker, consultant, author, and research person. I do doctoral supervision as well, post-doctorate, which I thoroughly enjoy because it's one-on-one, thinking it all through from the beginning. There's no formula. You can't say, oh, just do this and this. You've got to really think about what you advise. So that's where I am now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So just those few things that you do, really, Nigel. So I wonder if
Just
this is going to feed into the life lessons that you're going to share with us today. You know, I get the impression that, you know, this ball of energy that I've observed over the years, you like doing lots of different things. You know, you can see that from the career that you have today and your path from getting there. So now let's dig into some of these life lessons. So, you know, share with us, you know, what are some of the life lessons that you've applied and that have helped you to get here?
Well, I suppose one of them, this isn't one of my three, but one of them is exactly what you've just said. Learn to live with myself. I am someone who likes jumping in, and I get bored if I spend too long in the same thing. I'm not very good at checklists and planning and the kind of things that you're absolutely excellent at, Rob. So I just have to accept myself. You know, I can't look at you and say, oh, if only I was a bit more like Rob. I'm not going to be, and I've just got to accept that. That's a kind of half less than three, my 3.5. Now, my first life lesson is really important and enduring, and that is put trust at the heart of everything you do. That I am a great believer in the power of trust. I'm also not naive. I don't believe in blind trust. I believe in smart trust. But if you pick the people you want to work with based on the level of trust, you can't, or you can go wrong, but you're less likely to go wrong. And I have turned things down, pretty lucrative, interesting things, where I'm just thinking, I don't really get you, I don't trust you. And in my experience, whenever you get that feeling at the beginning, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so I put trust at the heart of everything I do, and the corollary to that is I don't pick fights or bear grudges. Marshall Goldsmith once told me, he said, Nigel, let it go, let it go. And it's true, you know, and I never used to. I used to be someone who would have grudges for decades, and I don't anymore.
Wow, that's
Life
me.
is too
I'm
short.
like that. That's amazing. I'm glad there's hope for me, Nigel, because me and my entire family are like that.
Just remember Marshall Goldsmith, the let it go, the flick of the ear, the let it go.
Yeah.
And it's true, it's so much more healthy to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. The people who've helped you, not the people who've tried to destroy you. And there are many in my life, I have to say. That's my first one.
Yeah. Oh, just before you move on, just to drill into that a little bit more. So trust. Do you kind of trust your gut then when you meet somebody? Is that how you kind of get an idea of whether you should trust them or not? Or do you kind of learn a bit more about them? Does it take a bit of time? How do you make that judgment?
Certainly there's an initial sense of whoa or whoa. And I test, I suppose I would say baby steps. Baby steps, extending a little bit of trust, seeing what happens. Extending a little bit of trust, seeing what happens. And then you start to move forward. And then when you get to a certain point, you can take much bigger steps. But I've never just thrown myself and said, oh, that sounds great. How much money did you say you wanted? You know, that's what scammers try and do, is win your trust and then clean out everything you've got. And I don't want to be scammed, not financially, but I don't want to be scammed intellectually either. So I would say smart trust is the way to go. And smart trust is not just going by your gut. Sometimes the gut is exactly wrong, i.e. that you can say, I don't like you, and it turns out that person is a really interesting, genuine and good human being. And I shouldn't have been so miserable to start with. And sometimes it can say, this is a great person, and you end up learning the hard way that isn't necessarily so. So yes, trust is never far from my consciousness. And I think I get better at it. The more you extend trust. I meet still loads of people who say, never trust anyone. No. Best advice, never trust anyone. Never trust anyone. And okay, that gets you through, but it's a sort of horrible way to live, I think. If you can't literally you're suspicious, you're looking round corners all the time.
Yeah.
And you never have that. I've gone to quite dangerous places in my life. I've been sent, and I go because I really trust that person. And I'm in their hands. I end up flying into some place. I flew into Libya. I flew into Syria. I flew into Egypt in the middle of the crisis. And the only way you can do that, or the only way you can handle that, is to say, this person has my best interest. They will never let me come to harm.
Yeah. You've built that trust over time.
I used to work in Northern Ireland a lot. When I was in Scotland, I refused to not work in Northern Ireland. A lot of people wouldn't go to Northern Ireland because it was in the middle of the Troubles. I did. And I met some just wonderful people in Northern Ireland. And I used to sit with them and think, they would never let me come to harm. It just would be something they wouldn't do. And that was great. So I built good relationships. And I did some interesting things when other people thought I was a complete idiot to even step foot in the place. And it's not like, the world isn't like that. Northern Ireland's full of people who get on with their day-to-day life. And you can be unlucky, but I could be unlucky crossing the road. So I'm not totally naive, but I do think that people are good. Basically, my philosophy is people are good. And you've just got to find that good in them. Not everyone. There are some evil, miserable whatsits as well. Largely
the majority.
The majority.
Absolutely. So life lesson one, trust. Life lesson two, Nigel.
This is a hard one. It took me a long time to learn. And I'm sad about that, actually. I'm really sad about that. And that lesson is, don't be your own self-limiting enemy. I was really good at saying, that's too hard. Oh, you could, not you'll look an idiot. Don't do that, you'll fail. Don't put yourself forward, that'll be humiliating for you. So I sort of held back from really good opportunities earlier in my life, that including the doctorate, thinking, oh God, if you fail, it'd be a disaster. That limitation. One guy I used to know in Scotland talked about the Black Abbot. The Black Abbot who sits on your shoulder. And the Black Abbot is, every time someone says, why don't you do that, Nigel? You go, but what?
Yeah.
What if, but?
It's the negative self-talk.
Black Abbot. So I like that. Limiting conversations with yourself, self-talk. And I grew up in a tough place. I grew up in a council estate, and I always had that sort of slight chip on my shoulder. I'll never be this, and I'll never be that, and they'll spot that I'm a complete fraud. And I kind of pandered to people who came from different sorts of backgrounds because I thought, well, they're really good. And it took a long time to realise that sometimes they weren't even really good. They weren't even good. They were absolutely hopeless. But because they had this veneer of confidence, I kind of fell for it. So I was very self-limiting. And I urge a lot of people that I work with, don't believe that stuff about. It's in your head, these voices in your head. You've got to push them away. Don't believe it. Put yourself out there a little bit more. Because it's not just me. I'm not the only one in the world. And
did that come from kind of
big self-lesson?
Yeah. So did that come from seeing what you were capable of achieving, and that kind of built your confidence over time, or was there a kind of switch flipping moment, an experience that you had? What enabled you to disregard that or stop that negative self-talk?
I think it was not. I wish it had been a kind of road to Damascus moment. It was really slowly but surely realizing I could do things that other people couldn't, or I could achieve things that other people would struggle with, and recognizing that I shouldn't be so hard on myself. And there are big steps of being achieved. I ran a software company, was chief executive of a software company. I got that job when I was 38. I was quite young, and it's full of, I'm going to screw this up, and I didn't. And my first book, when I got offered the contract, I was offered a 3-book deal. I was offered the contract, and I refused to take any advance. And I said, look, just in case, I don't have to pay it back. That would be embarrassing. And the publisher said, the reason we give you an advance is so you will not pay it back. You will write the book. And so I wrote the book, and I wrote it actually ahead of schedule. When I submitted it, they said, oh, what, on schedule? Oh no, we didn't expect anyone to do it on schedule. So I realised I could do that. I realised I could write, and I still think I can write. That hasn't left me. Maybe naive overconfidence, but I never thought I could ever kind of sit down and do something that would endure in that way. When I came into the BBC, you know, it's full of all these Oxbridge, deeply smart people who are, some of them slightly arrogant, some of them downright nasty. And I had to find my way in that organisation, coming in at a senior level, right at the end, you know, with most people it's career. So that was a very big life lesson about, you know, you've got to really say what you want, go for it. And if necessary, you know, accept that it didn't work. And I also learnt in the BBC that the only way to get things done is to have alliances and allegiances. So I consciously look for alliances. And that people, you know, I remember the director of IT, who I really got on very well with at the end. But at the beginning, my staff said, "Oh, IT are our biggest enemy. They stop us doing something. They stop us doing everything." And I kind of went out on a limb, really, to win him over and win his team over. And they were great, because they realised together we could win-win. You know, we could create really forward-facing, innovative, tech-based stuff, and that they could take some of the glory. So the second thing linked to that was I never tried to take all the glory. I never said, we did this right. I'd say, you have to hand it to the director of IT. He was fantastic in sorting this out and sorting that out for us. And that built a good relationship and a trusting relationship. But at the beginning, I think he looked at me and he said, "You're out to get us. We don't trust you. You'll trip us up. You'll spend our money for nothing." And so it was interesting. So that's a really big life lesson for me.
Yeah, very good. So your third life lesson then, Nigel. What's your third one?
My third one is be generous. And if you're generous, it often comes back tenfold. Yeah. And being mean doesn't ever come back to you, apart from think doors close and you don't make the same connections. So, you know, I give of my time and I do, and often I'm generous and it's not reciprocated. You know, people just take, and I'm an easy touch, if you like. But I notice, you know, there's no way I go, "Oh, well, that's okay." I notice. Yeah. But I also notice that the people who say, sometimes 5 years ago, I remember when you did that, and that was such a good thing to do. I will do this for you now. Or I can ask people to help me, and they'll say, "Well, you were so good when you helped me. Of course I'll help you." So I always think it's the best way to go. Being generous is not a mug's game. And a lot of people think it is a mug's game. But so if you read that book, Give and Take, you know, I like giving, but I also recognise that sometimes I have to take. And asking for help, I suppose, is the other side of that. I found it very difficult to ask for help. Now I do. Now I say, "I can't do this. I need help to do this." Yeah. And I love working with people who do stuff that I absolutely can't do. So I'm generous. I think I am generous, genuinely generous. But I also think I know when to ask for help and to kind of note that what you do is when that happens, you build a kind of network around you of good people who you have helped and they will help you, unquestioning, on both sides. And I find that richly rewarding and life enhancing, really. It makes me feel way better about myself and my life than it would do if I was just sitting there bearing grudges, being miserable, not trusting anyone. No, I don't think I could survive like that. I think I'd find it very, very difficult. And I know people like that. You know, I can think of a couple of names immediately that spring to mind that sit there in a kind of, "I'm going to sue you. You know, I don't trust you. Yeah, I can only, if I get anything out of you, there's no way I'm going to give it back, and that'll serve you right," and all this kind of stuff. And maybe you can live life like that, but I don't think I could. I wouldn't want to be around those kind of people. Yeah, some do successfully elbow their way to the top in that kind of mentality, but they're not necessarily the happiest of people. No, I don't think so. I think that's right. They live kind of black lives, you know, and there's a cupboard somewhere and they don't dare open it because it will haunt them with. And some people have done some very bad things in their life to elbow their way to the top. And you know, I've done difficult things, and there are some things I'm deeply ashamed of, particularly in my early career. But I've learned from those, and I've tried to learn the lessons and not repeat. But some people just carry on being that way. And it's not a good way to be. Absolutely sure of that. 100% sure of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nigel, so much for just sharing those lessons with us all. I think it's so interesting. Read your books and come to your conference sessions and seen you around for years, and then to get a bit more of an insight. We sit down and we'll have a beer every now and then, or dinner together when we're out at a conference or something like that, but to actually understand a bit more about what makes you tick has just been fascinating. So yeah, thank you so much for being a guest. It's been really, really wonderful to have you here.
Rob, that's really kind, and thank you, and I appreciate it, and I've enjoyed it. Actually made me think a little bit, reflect a little.
Brilliant. I'm so glad of that. Thanks, Nigel. If you've enjoyed learning those 3 life lessons, then make sure that you like, subscribe and follow so that you never miss an episode.